A student, popular football player, evil child molester.
We find the defendant guilty.
I've never woken up in the morning and wondered, did we get the wrong guy?
This trial was a sham.
There's been an outcry.
He's a great guy.
He was absolutely guilty.
They got it wrong.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.
In your co-main event, BC, what we saw was Mikey Gall losing to Mike Perry. Fairly one-sided, I would argue. Not terribly one-sided, but it was pretty clear who was winning that fight. Basically past the 2-minute mark until the very conclusion there. So, Mike Perry, who famously hung up on you last week, had
Look, he
no
sent me to hell. Look, just be honest. He sent me to hell multiple times.
He sent you to Hades. But he had no corner, essentially. He had his girlfriend there, who seemed like a very nice person. And she gave him water when he needed it and ice in the back of his neck when he needed it and said nice things. It was really, again, this is not about her per se. She seems like a very nice person, and Mike seems to have a lot of affection for her. What do we make of his strategy? Did he prove something to you, BC, in the way in which he went about the preparation for this fight and having her in the corner and the way he looked?
Here's what he proved to me, that he's not a complete clown show sideshow. And what I mean by that is we knew of his ability. He was 6-6 in the octagon, and some of those 6 wins coming in were impressive. We knew he had the potential at certain points since he moved to the UFC to become somewhat of a legitimate contender. He'd taken some back steps. He moved up to face elite competition and got stopped. But I think what this build to this fight was, including my off-the-rails interview, it showed you that you had to start questioning for the first time, like, this isn't a show. Like, this man is off kilter. This man's crazy. He's now going to have his girlfriend with no other cornerman. Like, what the hell's going on here? So I think the greatest victory he did, Luke, against a solid out in Mikey Gall was keep the train on the tracks. Remind you that even with all that craziness, he's still a viable player at welterweight. I think he's still got a lot of improving to do, and he mentioned that much, saying, I'm looking for the right team. It's obvious that he's had problems in the past with management and coaches and trust and all that, and he, spoke openly after the fight about potential IRS issues, so maybe part of having just his girlfriend in the corner meant you didn't have to pay those other corner men if he had them in there. But I think what he showed you, Luke, is look, if he had lost this fight, it would have been 3 in a row. He would have been pushed down on the card. Yeah, we would have cared from a sideshow standpoint, but he's still pretty legit because we thought there were areas Mikey Gall could have success against him, and Perry was just so much stronger, better grappler, better experience, stayed calm, didn't turn into some crazy brawl. And while we're here, shout out to Coach Latore, baby, 1-0, your clubhouse leader for Coach of the Year. Come on, baby, you're looking good. You're looking good, baby. That was what she said to Mike, and she was right. I mean, maybe that's all you need, Luke. Maybe we're done with this. People daddy pantsing you in the corner trying to fire you up. Maybe the future is you having your wife on the right, abuelo on the left, daughter on the lap, giving you a massage during MK and letting you know, good point, Luke. Well done. I like that. Oh, the haircut's not as bad as the fans think.
Yeah, my dad nowhere to be found. Okay, here's what I would say we learned about this one, which is we've learned that Mike Perry is very frustrating. I can believe that his girlfriend, who, again, seems like a very nice person, in this particular case may have even been like legitimately beneficial, which was, I think Mike Perry is probably better than Mikey Gall even on a bad day. I don't know that he had one, but I'm just saying even if he did, I think he could probably find a way to get the win. I did think Mikey Gall looked improved in the stand-up, but overall, he jumped to the UFC way too quickly, and I think it's really hurting his development. But Mike Perry is very, very talented, and maybe just having somebody who could be soothing, calming, keep a guy like that who is prone to excess centered, maybe that's exactly what he needs. And also there's sort of an argument to be made about how many different hands in fighters' pockets there are and how it ends up making them broke, and to what extent they can look around and say, how do I minimize my life a little bit where I still have the things that I need, but maybe not too much. Of course, I would say that the answer to that problem is really fighter pay more generally, but separate discussion for a separate time. But I mentioned that Mike Perry is frustrating because he'll go and rant about homophobic things, and he thinks that having a sliver of DNA entitles 2%. Him to say racial epithets.
2%.
And that's,
Luke.
yeah. Well, hold on a second. that's bad enough. But what's really kind of frustrating is I've actually interacted with Perry in person. I found him to be very polite and frankly quite nice and a decent person. He comes obviously from a background that made him, sort of a salty dog in the way that he is. But if you just watch the guy compete, the thing that is frustrating to me is that he obviously has a lot of ability. And I don't think he's gotten even anywhere close to maximizing it. Now, is that his coach's fault? Maybe. Is that his fault? Maybe. I don't know. I've not been close enough to the situation to diagnose. And the good news is he's 28 years old. If he felt like he needed to prove a point with this one fight in a fight that was, again, relatively speaking, low risk, fine. All's well that ends well. But the reality for Mike Perry is he still has time to really figure out who he is and how far he can go. He just has to get the right team around him and really center his life. If having this person around in the corner in this way for this time was good, that's great. But what he really needs in his life are people that I think love him and center him and balance him and make him happy and bring normalcy to his experiences. If they can do that and he can then take that energy from his personal life and channel it to his professional life, dude, he might be something way more than he's already been, which is a pretty good fighter. He might be able to be way better than that. He is naturally strong. I think he's a born fighter. He's not afraid of contact. He doesn't hardly get affected by pain in any kind of way that most normal fighters do. I think sometimes he makes pretty good decisions, but he just hasn't gotten anywhere close to scratching the surface. Look, if Mike Perry ends up being what he ends up being, which is never a champion, okay, well, most UFC fighters aren't. But I honestly think, I'm not saying he has championship future in front of him. I'm just saying it will be a shame for someone that naturally talented to not ever see how far they get by virtue of all these other considerations. To me, that would be a bit of a tragedy, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's still time to get it right.
Well said, and you were on the verge of giving Jay testicular aneurysms there by taking so long, but I did enjoy that. Hey, by the way, from my interview with him on the State of Combat podcast last week, how about this nugget? John Jones played matchmaker between Mike and Lattori. Set him up at a bar. I said, Mike, what was the pickup line that got her? He said, John put our hands together. I scooped her up off the ground. I said, baby, let's get out of here. How caveman raw is that, Luke? All right?
That's 80s cinematic.
Would you let John Jones fix you up with anything?
I mean, I'm married.
All right.
Is that what you mean?
All right. Maybe. Like if we got your brother together to make those burgers and what about, could your brother cook the edibles into the burgers by any chance?
Oh, yeah. My brother could absolutely do that. Hey, very quickly, any other standout performer from Saturday you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, yeah. She was so standout, I forgot her name. The women's strawweight on the undercard, the Rousey clone. Kay Hansen had a hell of a Know Me Now victory in her UFC debut, Luke, going in there against a Invicta former champion. Even though she was favored coming in, I thought it was hella impressive. And it was pretty badass to see her had gotten cut right before she got the armbar, to see her walk away, blood on her face, 19, 20 years old, second youngest fighter in the UFC behind Chase Hooper. Bright future ahead. That was a strong win.
Yeah, she's a Candace Owens fan, which always saddens me. But I'll say this: she looks pretty talented.
Luke, can that was like politics from fighting, please, Luke.
I mean, I made a comment and I dipped. That's fine. It was a phenomenal. It was a phenomenal performance. It was almost exactly what Dustin Hazlett had done to Josh Berkman, which is one of the all-time great UFC submissions. So a very auspicious beginning for her. She looked to be the real deal. We'll see how far she can go. I think I would also give a shout out to Tanner Bosser. I'm not a big fan of mullets, ironic or otherwise, but I'm a big fan of people who look like Canadian hockey enforcers, but got a little bit of smarts on them too. Great job by him finding an opening and then finished off Felipe Lins from an angle. And then, doing the post-fight interview, missing a front tooth. I mean, I don't know how you can't love that, BC. That's my kind of man right there.
Yeah, I can see that. That was an impressive win. It was a bad card on paper, but it actually delivered. There were a lot of people that went for it, Luke. They went after it, right? They got in that ass. It was a good night of fights.
A student, popular football player, evil child molester.
We find the defendant guilty.
I've never woken up in the morning and wondered, did we get the wrong guy?
This trial was a sham.
There's been an outcry.
He's a great guy.
He was absolutely guilty.
They got it wrong.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.